Hello there, welcome back. It's another film from childhood memory. I'm talking about Clash of the Titans today, the Ray Harryhausen final film. Not the boring as hell remake. This is the original. This is the wonderfully enjoyable finale to the Ray Harryhausen world. I'm glad it was this one, was his finale, not the film Sinbad film, because that film was pretty dull and boring. This film's a lot better. It's got a lot more stuff going on in it. It was like a case where Harryhausen was getting overtaken by the modern special effects world. Now, because in the 50s and 60s and even the early 70s, Harryhausen, he was pretty much in charge of his films. Him and his producer, Charles Shea, were in charge of the films. They got a budget. It was never great budgets, but they were good budgets that allowed them to do the films, but also allowed Harryhausen to have the time to do the special effects himself. So it was a case of you shot the film and then you'd go off and a year or two later the film came out. It's not that different from what happens nowadays with special effects films, where people shoot a film and then like 2 years down the line the film's actually released. And some of these big effects movies, that's how they're doing it, like the Avatar and things like that. So some of the Avatars actually fall in the Ray Harryhausen production schedule. I mean, when Tom Baker did his Sinbad movie, he did the movie, had a time to have a career lull, had to go and get a real job in the real world, got back home, became Doctor Who. As that's how long the post-production took. I mean, the film he'd shot like 2 years ago was a film they used to see whether they could act to play Doctor Who. That's how long it takes. I mean, he'd had a whole career collapse after that while he was waiting for this film to come out. That's typical Harryhausen, because it just takes ages to do these things. Plus, he'd also work in the script, they'd choose a director, and he'd work out the sequences that Harryhausen would do, and he'd do other physical productions. But it took time, so each film took about a year or two to make. And there's also the time of actually writing scripts. So and Harryhausen would not always just repeat the same stuff again and again. He started out in the 50s and the kind of, the big monsters movies attacking the big cities. But then he got bored with that because there's only so much he'd do. They had the alien invasion one, If There's the Flying Saucers. And then eventually we moved on to Sinbad movies, because that was fantastic when it was in the past. It gave you a much more range of creatures you could create. Following the first Sinbad movie, they did things like The First Man on the Moon, Gulliver's Travels, things like that. There's a three-bordered Gulliver, because actually we did more of the book than most films did. Valley Guanji. So he didn't get trapped and doing the same thing again and again. You did Jason Argonauts, which is the high-class Greek mythology thing. I mean, nowadays you think of Harryhausen as Greek mythology, because the Sinbad movies aren't Greek, but the same kind of creature designs you get in the Jason Argonauts is the big movie of Harryhausen's career, the one that everyone still watches. But if you show a Harryhausen film to a kid, they're going to love it. I showed it to my nephew and he was entranced by watching these movies. And you can watch the films. I've been watching quite a lot of them on projector. You can see them much more like the way they were meant to be seen. You can see the design more and the worlds more. But I'm talking about Clash of Titans, because Clash of Titans was strange, because that was my first viewing of a Harryhausen film, and his career was pretty much over. So I went back after that and saw the other films. And I saw this one on TV. I didn't see it projected till over Christmas with a projector. And it was just a beautiful thing to see. Because I'm trying to watch films I saw as a kid on the projector just to get a bit more of a view of what they were like when they were released. And Clash of Titans loses a lot on the small screen. It really does, because it is an epic story. I mean, they are taking a story that does have a flow of events. It's the same way with Jason Argonauts. It's like, it's a fall of a kingdom, then Jason has to grow up, then he has to start the quest, then there's the quest, then there's the getting the golden fleece. There's a whole epic arc there. And this film's the same. This is where Perseus, who is again lost basically his father was Zeus, who seduced this princess. She's cast out of the seas. They safely arrive in this village. The place that did it to her is trashed by Zeus. And that's just the first 2 minutes of the film. And then basically Perseus grown up and Zeus tried to help him, and other gods been jealous of Zeus's attempts to help him. And he gets into the whole thing about falling in love with this princess who has been eyed by another who was the son of another god or of a goddess. She hates Perseus because Zeus turned her son into this creature. It's just the back and forth between her and Zeus as they try and take control of Perseus' life, and he has to always fight the monsters to defeat the various things that she has created to stand in his way of getting this princess. And that's the story basically, is he has to keep on proving himself to be worthy of Zeus's, attention, but also to save his love and save the kingdom of his love. And it's just wonderful because it is just this epic thing. I remember seeing it as a kid and loving it. I watched this film so many times as a child, and I'm sure I annoyed the hell out of my parents by watching this so often. There's monsters, there's great villains, it's non-stop. And you get, Medusa, you get these, you have to enter the world of the dead, there's a 3-headed dog, there's the Kraken at the end. It's just non-stop things going on. There's just non-stop wonderful moments in the film that just keep going and going and going. It's just a wonderful barrage of terrific sequences. And you get a lot of good actors like Maggie Smith and Laurence Olivier as the gods, Burgess Meredith as the guy helping Perseus. He's an actor, but he likes Perseus, and he ends up being his friend and helping him, being an advisor for all the troubles. And he knows a lot about the myths. You've got Perseus with the flying horse, which is a wonderful image, and it looks beautiful. I mean, there's some special effects that don't age well because you've got layers of imageries from different scales of things. There's some things that, time has shown how they did it, and having high definition shows some of the tricks. But it's still wonderful to see the tricks. It's still wonderful to see what they had to do years ago to try and do things you can do on your computer now quite easily. They couldn't do that. They had to actually use very much math and very careful cutting images from one set onto a miniature stage with another background of a moving monster. It's just the craftsmanship is amazing. And even when you see stuff that looks a bit dodgy, it doesn't matter because it's still beautiful. And I know as a kid that I was too stupid to notice. And especially in a small screen, you don't notice as much. On the big screen, you do. But as you can tell, just me talking about it, it's just one thing after another. It's that kind of one thing after another movie. But there's a lot, that actually is a solid story. It just Perseus learning to deal with the gods because he's a half god, half man. It's just his quest for love and his quest to defend the kingdom and defend his love from the machinations of the gods. But it's just there's lots of things he has to do, to seduce the girl. He has to answer these questions, and he has to go and do these quests to do that. Then when he gets the girl, something else happens, which means he has to defend her again and go on this other quest. It's just always another quest, always another story. It's this feeling watching the film of this endless quest for the guy to keep proving himself. And it works beautifully. Even though the lead actor, Harryhausen's not a great actor, like a lot of actors in Ray Harryhausen lead, he works well enough because you don't need a great actor. You just need someone who's naive and who'll just go do what he's told and let the other much more experienced actors steal the scenes. And to be fair, Hammond seems to know that. He seems to understand his place in the film as I'm the guy who doesn't get the good reviews, But he does a good job for what he's doing. It's just that he's going to be upstaged by everybody else. It's either a monster or someone that Burgess Meredith. You're getting upstaged, no matter what you do. So, I mean, it's just a wonderful film. There's just so much energy to it. Even when there's characters that are referenced by Star Wars, there's a little owl called Bobo that's actually a mechanical owl, which is very much Star Wars influence, like R2-D2 and C-3PO, who stays with Perseus through the adventures and helps them. And yeah, that's tacked on, but they make it work. They give the character a personality, and you're like, okay, I know where this is coming from, but they do it well. You know, there's so many characters that are rip-offs of R2-D2 that are terrible. This is a good one. This is actually works. You can go along with it. It's like, yep, that's what it is, because it's part of a story. He's just... It could have been a stop-motion creature instead, but it was Star Wars. And it's still stop-motion, but it's just a different way of doing it. But it works. It's fine. And, you know, what you're really here for are the monsters. And the monsters deliver. I mean, you've got the villain, the son of the goddess, who's been turned into this mutant monster. And he keeps on coming. He's always causing trouble. He's like he either creating these massive, scorpion creatures they have to fight, or basically creating a living hell for his ex-fiancée just because she dares to reject him. He's just a wonderfully evil character who deserves to die horribly. You've got the blind sisters and their magical eye that are great because they're cannibals. Like, be careful of them, they're cannibals. That's great. The Kraken's great. The flying horse is great. I mean, Medusa's the big iconic character from that film. It's done so well because it's stop motion. It's not just a person with a silly mask. It's a stop motion creature, and she turns people into stone with how ugly she is. And Perseus has to be smart and use a reflection to do it, and use that head to scare the big creature at the end. And it's wonderfully worked out. It's wonderfully done. And it's very moody, because this film actually has really good nuance of changing the mood all the time. It goes from dark to sunny to dark, sunny. It keeps on changing mood, so you're not stuck in one sort of tone ever, but everything feels like it's one world. So it's a wonderfully made children's film. It's a children's film, though. It's meant to create a sense of wonder of the world for your child's view. And as a child, it really worked. It created a sense for me where I was like, oh wow, this stuff's fascinating. And it got me into Greek mythology. It is this great sense of wonder for the world, how great it can be. So even though there's influence of Star Wars, and even though Star Wars was taking over that kind of area, and Harryhausen was pretty much done by this point, it's still a great swan song. It's a very underrated finale to his career, because I think it's like the one people really tends to focus on is the Golden Voyage of Sinbad, is his last great film. This one's not a great film, but it is a really good one. This is a really good swan song. It really works. I think if you're in the mood for a good action adventure movie, this really works. If you want to show a kid a good action adventure movie, this really works. It will get them. There's lots of stuff going on all the time. It never stops being boring, but there's always a sense of there's a story going there. Even the story is very basic. Save the princess, get the princess, and save the princess. That's pretty much it. But lots of monsters around that, and it just works. So, yeah, Clash of Titans is great. Go watch it. I love it. I watch it every so often. I still have a great nostalgia for it. Even though it's not the best Harryhausen movie, that it's a lot better than its reputation, and it is a really good swan song. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you'll go watch the movie. Right, bye for now.